Looking into Robert Pattinson's career and the direction it has taken, it is unconventional yet utterly fascinating. His first major appearance was in the Harry Potter series, but then he absolutely exploded in popularity with the Twilight franchise. When that ended, he took a step away from Hollywood and began starring in obscure independent movies, but eventually found himself in the limelight again as his indie films became critical darlings. Working with celebrated directors like the Safdie brothers, David Cronenberg, Robert Eggers, Christopher Nolan, Matt Reeves, Claire Denis, and most recently Bong Joon-ho, he has broken out of the teenage heartthrob typecast. I mean, he's still sensationally handsome, don't get me wrong, but he is now one of the most respected and acclaimed actors working today. He's certainly become one of, if not my favorite. But a lot of his characters are, kinda wacky. They get into shenanigans. Perhaps even tomfoolery, if you will. In other words, he's a freak, and I absolutely love him for that. He is just one silly guy. This originally began as a letterboxd list that I made about 2 years ago, and I hadn't made much progress on it. But late last year, I got the genius idea to complete it and make it into an entire video. And since Mickey 17 came out not too long ago, that's why I'm here. I'm excluding the making of documentaries he's been in since they're just interviews, but since a lot of the freaky things Rob does are integral to their narrative stories, I will be getting into a bunch of spoilers, so here's your spoiler warning for a whole bunch of these movies, including my thoughts on the Twilight Saga, which I watched for the first time for the sake of this video. Fun. Also, this ranking is very subjective since my definition of freak for Rob is very loose. I can use it affectionately when I see him as a sleep-deprived Bruce Wayne putting sunglasses on indoors, or derogatorily when I see him as a deplorable Connie Nickus doing anything. There are levels to his freakiness, so not all freakish acts are created equal. Now let's dive into the eclectic filmography of our favorite crown-scented celebrity as we explore the good, the bad, and the ugly of his performances, as well as hear me say the word freak a billion times, shall we? We got 35 movies to get through, so you better hold on tight, spider monkeys, cause this is... However, it's going to take a bit before we get to his freaky characters, so I'm going to start with something as unnerving as normal ones. But looking at the overall runtime for this video, it's not going to take too long. So let's start with... This really shouldn't count, but for the sake of being a completionist, sure, why not? This was Robert Pattinson's very first role, all the way back in ye old year of 2004, in which he plays an older version of Reese Witherspoon's character's estranged son. This is the only scene he's in, and it got cut from the final film, and Rob wasn't told until he was at the premiere. I did not watch this movie since, there's no point. Reese Witherspoon apologizes for something, Rob doesn't accept it, but then he forgives her at the end of the scene. It's about 5.5 minutes long, so I don't know what else to say. The only interesting thing is that Rob didn't know, and actually the casting director felt so guilty that she ended up getting him an audition for this indie movie called Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. It must have helped his career or something, because otherwise I wouldn't be making this video now, would I? A very boring and complex movie that not even poor Rob understands. I guess it looks pretty. The time inversion, the neon lighting, Rob's highlights, that one building that's somehow exploding but pieces back together at the same time. I don't know, Neil's just a guy. It was the first time I saw Rob play a normal guy and it was weirding me out. He was using his natural accent and everything in this. Whoa. I think the only way this movie would be higher was if he was the one who said the ridiculous "I ordered my hot sauce an hour ago" line. Even if Neil would be considered boring compared to his past and future counterparts, we do all have to collectively thank Rob for getting Christopher Nolan to bring Oppenheimer into the world. Without him, Nolan wouldn't be an Oscar-winning director and we wouldn't have the iconic phenomenon in human history that was Barbenheimer. Okay everyone, say it with me. Thank you, Robert Pattinson. I was really disappointed by this film. I don't watch trailers for movies I watch at home, so I guess it's my fault I went into this with very false pretenses. Going by the two posters that I saw, and that is A24, I thought, oh, this kind of looks like After Yang, a subdued but moving philosophical piece on the human condition. I shall be expecting a nice sci-fi family drama with good vibes. No. It's like horny Interstellar instead. It's not very often I get misled by a movie's poster, but damn it, it sucks when it happens. let's just say it isn't my thing to begin with. Though I thought Rob did really well with the baby Willow in the movie. Then I found out she's his goddaughter, so yeah, no wonder I felt a genuine kinship between them. Also, this is not the last time a Juliette Binoche character will have sexual relations with Rob, but it's good that later he's consenting. Rob's character Monty is probably one of, if not the most sane-ish person on the ship, and the only freaky thing he does is occasionally speak in baby talk. But since he is talking to a child, I guess it makes sense. Oh, and he also bashes in the head of a rapist, so good for him. Yeah, if you're into seeing a good Rob Pat performance, then unknown Mia Goth and or very sexual themes in your movies, then check it out, I guess? Insert AMC joke here. I don't care about this movie enough to make one. Nicole Kidman plays Gertrude Bell, a woman who explored and mapped the Middle East during the late 1800s to early 1900s, which I'm sure could have been told in a much more interesting movie. Rob's here too as T.E. Lawrence, the Lawrence of Arabia, though he doesn't do anything significant until an hour in. He gets the best line in the movie at least.
I have a PhD in medieval pottery shards, and it follows me around like the wafting of an old spinster's fart.
And he's pretty damn poetic with how he rizzes up Nicole Kidman.
The benign, soft glow of a campfire, and a good scotch in your fist, make a terrific bride.
Damn, okay. Rob's not in this an awful lot. I guess he's doing his own side quests or something. But aw, look at him with some lion cubs. This movie is as dry as the desert it's set in, so let's just move on. But I guess one can say Gertrude Bell is the uncrowned queen of the desert. No, I'm not kidding. That's actually how the movie ends.
She is the uncrowned queen of the desert.
Ugh, finally I get to talk about a good movie. The Lost City of Zed. British people are so weird. It's another historical drama about a real life person going on a little adventure. And it's actually interesting. Rob plays Henry Costin as he tags along with Percy Fawcett and they search for a hidden civilization in the uncharted rainforest. Are you better off watching The Road to El Dorado instead? Yeah. This one still got some merit. Percy's character growth from calling the indigenous people of the Amazon savages to actually respecting them as human beings was interesting, even if said growth was off screen, but it happens early on. Percy himself was performed well by Charlie Hunman. I liked the cinematography, and Tom Holland gives a great performance as Percy's older son, just a year before he starred in Spider-Man Homecoming. Oh, and we see Rob in these silly little glasses. Would spectacles be a more fitting term? Spectacles. He also shoots a guy in the ear and follows it up with,
Next one will be up your arse.
There's also this funny moment where he's so elated about fighting a waterfall, but he gets too excited and ends up tripping and falling. And despite trudging through dangerous weather, predators, and defensive native peoples, he later says, yeah, I'll do it again.
The jungle is hell, but one kind of likes it.
And so he does. Even if he's a supporting character, I was so engaged with Percy's story and his determination to find this lost city that I wasn't missing Rob as much compared to some others later down the ranking. This was one of the better movies on this list, as well as being one of Rob's most notable performances, so I definitely recommend you check this one out. Shortly following High Life, we have Life. Just Life. It's a biopic about James Dean being photographed by Dennis Stock, played by Rob, who takes interest in him just before he makes it big with movies like East of Eden and Rebel Without a Cause. I didn't know anything about James Dean going into this, so I didn't find it incredibly engaging. Except Eartha Kitt. I had no idea she had a thing for him, so seeing her was basically my Marvel cameo. It's a straightforward drama, and Rob is a pretty straightforward character. He's not exactly a freak yet. He's a bit socially awkward at the beginning. He throws up on his son. He uses a bucket to peek into James Dean's apartment and he looks goofy doing so. He goes off on this drunk rant to this woman and proceeds to get freaky with said woman. Aside from the Eartha Kitt scene, it was nice to watch the movie where the pictures of Rob playing around with the cow came from. Look at him, he's just having a gay old time. Other than that, the movie is fine. He tells James Dean to stop speaking in riddles.
Little expedition.
What is that even supposed to mean? You gotta stop speaking in riddles.
Haha, Batman foreshadowing. But I'm sorry, Rob. I'm going to be sticking with The Secret Life of Walter Mitty as my go-to Life magazine movie. So aside from the Twilight series, there's another blockbuster franchise I had to watch for this video. This was a bit of a side quest, but I watched the Harry Potter movies for the first time. Or rather, there's an asterisk to that. I tried getting into the book series when I was younger, but I couldn't get past the 4th chapter of The Sorcerer's Stone, even though I was a huge bookworm. And there was this one time ABC Family was doing this Harry Potter marathon, and I remember I sat through it for a while, but eventually I fell asleep. In other words, aside from Harry meeting Buckbeak and Prisoner of Azkaban, and a general scene of Harry and Ron underneath the invisibility cloak, I don't remember anything from these movies, to the point that I'm not even sure I've watched one in its entirety. So this was kinda first time viewing for me. I've only watched up to Goblet of Fire for this video so far, but I do like all these movies. They're fun times, and yes, I too wish I could be studying at Hogwarts. It's a lot more worthwhile than the American education system, and it's great seeing all these favorite actors of mine pop up. Emma Thompson, yo! Ralph Fiennes, yo! Gary Oldman, yo! Brendan Gleeson, yo! Katie Leung, yo! And of course, Robert Pattinson. Anyway, Cedric Diggory, that's such a fun name to say, is a bit of a goofball. His introduction is him quite literally dropping into frame, which, where was he coming from? According to this GQ interview, it was his idea to do that. Then there's him descending from the heavens. Then there's him telling Harry to take a bath with his golden egg or whatever. And look at him waving to the crowd right before he dives into the lake. What a goof. Here's him holding a wand like a gun because Rob thought holding it with one hand looked dorky, lol. Then there's him getting killed by Wormtail. Wait, what? I will be honest, I knew Cedric's death was coming, because when you're doing a video on Rob's movies, it's bound to come up eventually. But the scene itself was shocking to witness. Like, Cedric, no! Though being able to quote Dumbledore calmly asking, "Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?" was quite delightful. But oh my gosh, the scene of Harry returning with Cedric's body and everyone celebrating until they slowly have to realize that Cedric is dead. Ugh, it's so heartbreaking. I was expecting him to have more screen time, but oh well. It is really impressive how Rob got such a big boost so early in his career. He was about 18 when they shot this. This guy's going places. Yeah, these are good movies and I'm looking forward to watching the rest of them. Probably after I finish editing this video. Can't wait to see more of my man Ralph Fiennes. Yippee! However, I am still waiting for the Potter Puppet Pals to make an appearance. Like, what, you're telling me these silly little guys never once show up in any of the 8 movies? Come on now, don't be preposterous. I know I'm forgetting something. I got Rob, Ralph Fiennes, my hot take about the books. Oh, yeah. Yeah! I was pleasantly surprised by Water for Elephants. Even if there's only one elephant, Rob never gives her water. I knew going into this ranking that his more critically successful films were from the late 2010s onward, so I went into this 2011 movie with some doubt in my mind. But I actually kind of liked it. I mean, it's basically Titanic with a modern-day framing device where an old person tells the story about their time on a vehicle in the early 20th century to people who are interested in the subject, and they meet and fall in love with someone while an abusive partner gets in the way of that. They even name-drop the Astor family.
I ain't no Astor.
Jacob and Marlena are no Jack and Rose, I'll tell you that, but I did want to see the two of them escape Marlena's husband and ringleader of the circus, August, who, can I just say, I thought Rob's performance was alright in this, but it was really Christoph Waltz who I thought was the scene stealer. He has the right amount of love-to-hate energy like Billy Zane as Cal, a snobby, wealthy businessman who rules the circus with an iron fist and will do anything to keep his operation running the way he likes it. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that first because Christoph Waltz was just that damn good in this. Anyway, what freaky stuff is Rob up to? He shovels animal poop? Gross, but it's to be expected. He says the star horse needs to be put down since its health is getting worse, so he gets a gun and shoots it. Terrible, but this is an animal circus, and in the 1930s no less, so again, it's to be expected for that time. When Marlena and August are somewhat behind a curtain and she's taking off her shoes, Jacob peeks and watches her without her knowing. Creepy. And then a little bit later, a bunch of the performers are throwing a party, so he gets super drunk and wakes up in a trunk, dressed in drag, in front of everyone at breakfast the next morning. There we go. Happy Pride Month! Oh, and during the scene when he and Marlena meet Rosie, you can tell Rob is utterly delighted by her, and it reminded me of those cow pictures. This movie even gives us a cameo from the cabbage merchant from Avatar.
Ah, my cabbage! You're paying for those, huh?
So yeah, even though Water for Elephants is on the lower end of this list, it would be higher up if I was ranking these movies normally. You know, worst to best. It's nothing mind-blowing, but you might get something out of it like I did. There is some lore to this one, so buckle up. First of all, if you think this looks like a Lord of the Rings knockoff, you would kinda be right. The source material is partially based on a Norse mythology story that inspired J.R.R. Tolkien to write Lord of the Rings, but the existence of this specific adaptation damn well exists to capitalize off the success of the movies. Second of all, this thing's got like 5 different titles. It's called Ring of the Nibelungs, aka Curse of the Ring, aka Dark Kingdom of the Dragon King, aka Sword of Xanten, aka Die Nibelungen. Third of all, there are multiple cuts of this movie. Wikipedia says the full thing is 3 hours and 42 minutes. A UK version is 2 hours and 42 minutes, but the one I found was 2 hours and 12 minutes. Speaking of which, fourth of all, I originally was not going to include this in the ranking because I could not find it anywhere online. I found it in about 4 other languages that weren't English, like Hindi and German, and I was slightly considering buying a DVD, but then I realized, do people really care that much about the Curse of the Ring of the Dragon King with the Sword of Xanten? Eventually I found it on YouTube by taking a trip to the UK. Thank you, Surfshark. Not sponsored. And fifth of all, this is Robert Pattinson's second role, and this time he's finally in the actual movie, and all his lines end up getting dubbed over by some different actor.
Give him back. He belongs to me.
Yes, now.
Now give him back to me, boy. I'm the king's brother, and I call common men what I please.
My guy could not catch a break early in his career. I feel so bad for him. So I found a version of the movie, but also random deleted scenes that I'm just gonna assume is the rest of his screen time. However, they have absolutely nothing to write home about, so I'll just stick with the version I watched. As you can see, Rob's got this marvelous mullet going on, which he himself was aware of how bad it was.
The Ring of the Nibelungs, yeah, and I had a terrible wig on, and
And you want to know what his character's name is? Giselhair. Giselhair? There's not too much I can say about his dialogue since it's not being said by him, though in his introductory scene, his hawk lands on the main character Siegfried, and he's like, "Give me back my hawk!" And they almost challenge each other to a duel, but then he gets his bird back, so whatever. But later, he drinks a cup of blood from his brother, and now besties Siegfried in order to bind their brotherhood. Ew. Aside from that, if he's not drinking blood or speaking with another guy's voice, he just kind of stands around in the background like an NPC. When it comes to the movie as a whole, it's meh. There's a love triangle that's slightly intriguing because of how melodramatic it is, but Siegfried doesn't have any chemistry with the two women, so it really doesn't matter. Oh yeah, there's something to do with a ring in this, but it's barely relevant to the story and it feels like an afterthought. I mean, for what it is, this is an early 2000s TV movie and it doesn't look that bad. The first half is dreadfully boring to the point that I was too tired to finish it and went to bed, but when the romance aspect becomes more integral, it's aight. Actually, overall it's just kind of whatever. There's far better hero's journey stories that have been told, so just watch those instead. First Twilight movie on the list. Bet you weren't expecting it to be this low now, did you? So yes, like I said before, this was my first time watching the saga. I was well aware of them during the height of their popularity, but I was only 4 when the first movie came out, so I would have been too young, and I wasn't interested in them anyway. And guess what? I'm still not. But I am committed to the bit, so I forced myself to sit through all these stupid movies. I do have to admit though, New Moon is definitely a step up in the directorial department compared to the first one, with some actually really inventive cinematography, showing the passage of time and getting rid of the stupid color grading, but the story is still ridiculous as ever and sluggishly boring. I do not care about the love triangle, but the actual reason why this is so low is because Rob dips and is gone for a huge chunk of the runtime, except when he quite literally pops in and out here and there. He still does some bewildering things with the little screen time he has. Both Edward and Bella are aware of the 91-year age gap between them. Ugh. Bella gets a paper cut, and in order to protect her from his bloodthirsty brother, Edward yeets her across the room, which makes her bleed even more. Is he stupid? He still just waltzes around Bella's bedroom without her knowing and is there when she wakes up, but that was established in the first movie, and we'll get to the first movie. He also breaks up with Bella pretty brutally, saying things like, "You're not good for me," and "I'm just sorry I let this go on for so long." Yeah, it's revealed it was a cover-up, but my gosh, dude, way to lay her down easy. Oh, and an hour later, he reacts to Bella's death by crumbling a cell phone with his bare hand. In general, New Moon was bad, but the boring kind of bad, so it doesn't have the same entertainment value as the first Twilight. Yes, this is a short film, but since I'm including another one later, I guess I have to talk about this one too. And this was the only version I could find, so you all have to suffer looking at it like I did. At least you're not watching it with audio.
That boy was very good looking. Yes, yes.
This is part of an anthology film called Love and Distrust, but since the short was released as a standalone, that means I don't have to worry about finding the whole movie. Cool. Anyway, it's 12 minutes long, and it's about a girl fleeing to France because her boyfriend, played by Rob, left her for another woman, but he keeps sending her letters and eventually manages to track her down and apologize. He makes advances on her, she doesn't want it, someone interrupts them, she leaves, burns one of the letters, and that's it. Oh, and this is taking place during the moon landing for some reason. He definitely does do creepy things, don't get me wrong, but it's not as baffling compared to what he does in other performances. Edward's more involved in this one, but he's still not as freaky as you would think. I mean, New Moon ends with him proposing to Bella, and Eclipse proceeds with that by having him continuously ask her, so it's like, oh my gosh dude, no means no. But then she wants to marry him anyway because she finds out he's waiting until marriage, so whatever. I also think it's funny that he's canonically soulless. Oh, what else? He finally gets rid of Victoria and does so by not just killing her, but burning her body. Most of Edward's runtime in this is him being so possessive of Bella, and it really creeps me out. Same goes for Jacob. I can't stand either of them. Another thing that seriously annoyed me is that this is the third movie in the franchise where the conflict is like, oh no, people are disappearing and dying, who's behind all of this? Oh, shut up. These movies are such a chore to sit through. Speaking of which. Okay, everyone, say it with me. You nicknamed my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster? Yeah, I know. The CGI baby's ridiculous. Arrow's laugh is bewildering, and the climax to the movie, an entire franchise being all a dream, is straight up baffling. I cannot believe this was directed by the guy who wrote Chicago. How did we get here? But at the same time, I have died every day waiting for you. Well, anyway, Edward gleefully watches Bella beat up Jacob. Rightfully so, really. You imprinted on my daughter? He's also willing to get himself electrocuted for Bella. I mean, since he's already dead, I guess it would take more than that to kill him, but still. He also continues to have some of the weirdest quotes in the franchise.
Closet.
Vampires don't sleep.
It's not intended for sleep.
I do remember how to undress myself.
Yeah, I just do it so much better.
He and Bella also decide to get freaky again, and it's like, did they learn anything from last time? I don't know. When it comes to these three Twilight movies, Edward wasn't as freaky as I thought he would be. Maybe since I'm comparing them to his other roles, he seems pretty tame because of that, but I've seen stranger things from Rob. From acclaimed director David Cronenberg, with a number of fun romps under his belt like The Fly, Videodrome, Scanners, Crash, and Crimes of the Future, comes a commentary on Hollywood fame and people's desperate attempts to achieve that. Rich people are self-absorbed. Okay. So? Oh, and are also into incest? Okay? Oh yeah, Rob's in this too. Like New Moon, he doesn't have a ton of screen time, especially when you compare it to his previous collaboration with Cronenberg we'll get to later. And just like New Moon, he just pops in here and there. 3 minutes into the movie, his character Jerome says he wants to convert to Scientology.
She's a Scientologist.
I was just thinking about converting, just as a career move.
I'm sorry? We, the audience, don't know if he actually does. It's just something he says in passing early on, so I can't really say anything else about it. But him even considering it makes him freakier than a vampire. Later, he gets a call back to be this background actor in a sci-fi movie, and he wears this ridiculous outfit. And earlier, he tells Mia Wasikowska's character Agatha that he's seen someone after she asks him out. But later, they make out, get freaky. Okay. But then he gets freaky with her boss, who's Julianne Moore. Then he just kind of disappears from the movie, and that's that. Like High Life, he's probably the most normal character out of the main cast. It's insane to say that for a character who's interested in Scientology, but yeah. Can we move on, please? It was a wise Julian Solomita who once said, "You gotta be bottomless to get to the top."
Some will say it's a success story, some will say it's a lifestyle.
Bel Ami is about Rob sleeping his way through Paris for an hour and 40 minutes, and it's very boring. It's kind of ridiculous that a movie taking place in France is entirely made up of British, American, and Irish actors. Not one French person. Was Julie Delby busy? Also, the movie opens up with showing the title twice in 2 different fonts, and else like they forgot to delete one of the text layers. Anyway, once again, Rob gets freaky with multiple women. He has an affair with a married woman, but then he visits Uma Thurman and her alien husband, his old boss, just to see him die so he can weasel his way into eventually marrying her to continue climbing the social ladder. But then there's this other woman, played by Kristen Scott Thomas, I don't remember any of the characters' names and I don't care to look them up, that Rob gets involved with, and because of something she did or whatever, like I said, I don't care. He ends up throwing her to the ground and dragging her out of his place. Great. He eventually marries the daughter of one of those women, and she's played by Holiday Granger. Whatever. Boring movie. Skip, skip, skip. This is the movie in which Rob is killed on 9/11. Yeah. I knew that going into it, but what I didn't know is that the female love interest is Claire from Lost. Hello? Rob does some wacky stuff in this. He goes to a carnival and absolutely demolishes a panda plushie for whatever reason. He lights a cigarette in a corporate office because he sees this fancy bowl and assumes it's an ashtray, and then proceeds to use it to put it out anyway. When he first talks to Claire, he tries his best to flirt.
Can I ask your name?
Anonymous.
Anonymous. Is that Greek?
He later makes shadow puppets on her bare back. What? His little sister's being bullied in class by none other than baby Peyton List. Oh my gosh, hey girl. But this is what he does to get her to stop.
Excuse me, what are you doing? Stop!
Fun. There's this one scene where Rob sprays Claire with water. She rightfully gets upset and is all meta about it, about how they're gonna get each other wet, and it's supposed to be very sensual, and it's a tired cliche, and you're not gonna believe what happens anyway. Also, Rob has a poster in his shower. What a freak! His roommate says he's into freaky poetic crap, but if anything, he's more of a freak than Rob. He wants to sell panties on eBay or something? I don't know. They also have a baby head hanging around on one of the shelves in their apartment. I don't know what that's about. The 9/11 twist is just about the only thing the movie has going for it, and it's just there for cheap shock value. Next. Robert Pattinson in a Western. Yeehaw! It is very rare when I disagree with the letterboxd score for a movie, but a 3.0? Really? I genuinely had a great time with this movie. Captivating cinematography, quirky sense of humor, a very underrated performance from Rob, and my favorite performance from Mia Wasikowska. Which, okay, is probably not saying much from what I've seen from her, but I thought she was awesome in this. Rob plays Samuel Alabaster, a man who hires a preacher to officiate the wedding of he and his darling Penelope, who's been kidnapped in the mountains and is desperate to save her. Samuel Alabaster's got this goofy miniature horse he named Butterscotch to give to Penelope as a wedding present. Butterscotch walked so Jenny from the Banshees of Inisherin can prance, and the exact reason as to why he named it such is very funny.
After one of your favorite candies. I know whorehound's your all-time favorite. That doesn't seem suitable a pet name. I just want to pick the one that sounded the best.
While we're on the subject, let's talk about his accent. He sounds completely unrecognizable. Listen to a clip of this man and tell me you'd be able to know it was him.
Don't you hang me out to dry. You told me you believe in love. You told me you believe in love all the way.
But anyway, Rob is on point with his comedic timing in this. I didn't know this was an offbeat comedy until right before I pressed play, and even before Mickey 17, this proves how fantastic of a comedian he is. Early on in the movie, he struggles to take off his guitar, and then he sips a shot of whiskey because he really can't hold his liquor. Can't say the same for some of his other characters though. He even sings a song about Penelope called Honey Bun, and you'll never guess what half the lyrics are.
Honey bun, honey bun, honey bun, honey bun, honey bun, honey bun, honey bun.
It's genuinely really sweet, and it made me forget that Rob can play the guitar, but it also makes me wonder why he doesn't sing more often. Someone cast Robert Pattinson in a musical, damn it! There's also a scene in which he masturbates. This will not be the last time I say this. However, what I've said so far is only half the movie. What follows is what I will only describe will make sense to maybe 5 people in the world. I feel hesitant spoiling the movie, but it's like the very first episode of Gallivant. A guy goes on a quest to save and marry the love of his life, only to find out she's actually really chill with her situation and has no desire to marry him anymore. Samuel Alabaster's plan is to kill Anton Cornell, the man holding Penelope hostage, and then propose. So the preacher shoots the guy, but then Penelope goes ballistic and it's revealed she and Anton were in love. And not in a Stockholm Syndrome kind of way, but genuinely in love. Honestly, the entire marriage proposal scene is one of the best things I watched for this ranking. Rob gives it his absolute all, and it's astonishing to witness. Samuel Alabasters tried so hard to convince her to marry him that it recontextualizes everything you just watched. He turns from a quirky, hopeless romantic you're rooting for to a pitiful and pathetic man-baby who believes he's entitled to Penelope's love. The movie doesn't explain how he convinced himself that Anton kidnapped her and that she was still in love with him, especially since we do see a scene of them happy together at the beginning, but I guess it boils down to him devolving into a delusional incel.
You gave me mixed signals.
I gave you no signals! You're poison!
But do you want to know what is ultimately his reaction to all this? He accepts that Penelope won't love him. He gets up, excuses him to go to the outhouse, and we have about 50 minutes of the movie left, and there goes our main character. They never show his body, even though the movie felt just fine and dandy showing 3 other on-screen deaths, so I really thought he faked it. But nope. Oh well. Penelope and the preacher go off to go back into town for the rest of the movie. People weren't a fan of the plot taking this direction, but I was on board with it. Penelope and Parson bounce off of each other well, and it came with some funny moments. I really vibed with this movie. Rob lights up the screen with the time he has, and I am once again dying to see him cast in a musical. I'm not really sure how much of a hot take this is, but if you put a gun to my head and said I had to pick a favorite Twilight movie, it might be this one. I have to give credit where credit is due. The wedding scene is gorgeous. I'm not really one for the rustic, woodsy aesthetic, but the production design went all freaking out, and I love that. Good for them. Even if Crazy Rich Asians takes the cake for my all-time favorite wedding scene. I'm telling you guys, I do not like these movies, but there is some artistic merit to them. This shot has no right to go this hard. But Edward and Bella's wedding invitations annoy the crap out of me. First of all, they sent one to Jacob. Are they stupid? And they spelled out 2011. Oh, shut up. That's so pretentious. Also, the night before, Edward tells Bella that he's just checking for cold feet, which sounds insane out of context. Anyway, the two of them wait until marriage to get freaky, and this happens. He broke the bed. He broke the bed. This ends up with Bella getting pregnant, but when they come back from their honeymoon, the other vampires treat it like she's got a chest burster inside of her. With how they have to give Bella a C-section and how Edward changes the baby, it might as well be. Before that, he researches vampire babies, but uses Yahoo. Yahoo? This is the most I thought about Yahoo in years. I honestly didn't know they still existed. He also victim blames Bella for having the fetus kill her, even though he was the one who got her pregnant in the first place. What is wrong with him? And then during the delivery scene, he keeps biting her dead body in order to revive her as a vampire. Ew, 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 ew. During the first half of this movie, I really thought it wasn't as dreadfully boring as the previous 2 movies. And as much as I don't like Edward, he and Bella's wedding and honeymoon were slightly enjoyable to watch. But when they get back and worry about the baby and Jacob's there too, for whatever reason, it goes right back to being stupid again. However, there was one thing I was really looking forward to while watching this movie, and as I mentioned earlier, it was Hearing 1,000 Years by Christina Perri. I may not have grown up with this franchise, but I did grow up with the song, and it was one of my absolute favorites. I think I was in 4th grade when it came out, and I remember I chose it as my favorite song when I was doing this All About Me project. It could be the nostalgia talking, but I genuinely believe it's a wonderful song. I don't understand why they saved it for the very end of the movie after 2 other songs, but singing along to it while watching parts 1 and 2 was the most emotionally invested I got during these films. I could really go into that, but one of the most popular letterboxd reviews for this movie beat me to it. Listen, the sooner I move on, the less time I can spend talking about these ridiculous movies. We have an early A24 movie on our hands. Set in the Australian outback after a global economic collapse, a man's car gets stolen, so he teams up with the brother of one of the thieves, played by Rob, to track it down. It's a gritty, violent, western crime drama that made me wish I was watching something like No Country for Old Men instead. I don't even know if it counts as a Western if it's in the Australian outback in the not too distant future, next Sunday AD perhaps, if you want to look at it as a documentary of the current state of the world. I mean, it was alright. I wish I was more engaged with the story, especially since those first 15 minutes were great. I mean, look at this shot. Whoa! It also had this droning score that fit the tone, and the lead performances were really good. I didn't even know that was Guy Pearce until after the movie. I kept thinking he looked like Matthew Fox and he was going to yell at me about having to go back to the island. Anyway, you can feel a lot of the weight that's on the shoulders of Ray. One of my favorite aspects that Rob brings to his performances are his facial expressions. I'll get into it with later performances, but I love how he says so much by saying so little. He's amazing at capturing the internal dialogue within his characters, and Ray is one of the earliest examples of that. The camera can linger on him from anywhere from 5 seconds to 2 minutes, and it's incredible. I was hoping for him to have an Australian accent, but he has a southern one, and it's because he and his brother came from the US to hit it big at the mines. Rob yearns for the mines, guys. What a freak. He's new to the crime world and grapples with his heinous actions as he begins taking lives. There's this good scene around a campfire where Ray says he can't stop thinking about it, and Eric, Guy Pearce's character, tells him he shouldn't. He shouldn't stop thinking about it, and that's the price you have to pay for killing people. Hot damn. Ray's hiding out in this motel room, just like No Country for Old Men. And just when he looks out the window, the military drives past, so he ducks. And when someone knocks at the door, he shoots. And it ends up being a little girl? I don't know where she came from, but my gosh. Later, Eric gets arrested by the military, and while they're processing him so he can be taken to Sydney, Ray comes in, kills the 3 soldiers, and is like, that was easy. I thought it was going to be harder. Then after all this, he vibes and sings along to Pretty Girl Rock. What a goof. Except for the murder. Murder is bad, guys. Overall, The Rover may only be an okay movie, but it's certainly one of Rob's earliest performances that proves he's more than a swoon-worthy love interest. Some of you may be surprised by how low this one is, but guys, it's time. Please rise for the national anthem.
Thursday, October 31st.
Golly gee willikers, another excuse for me to yap about this movie. Yay! First of all, let's get the usual Batman lore out of the way. For the past 2 years, this billionaire has been spending his time dressing up like a bat, pulling all-nighters, and beating up lowly criminals. Okay, now for the stuff that Matt Reeves has added. Pattinson has bloodshot eyes, messy makeup, greasy hair, and has to use those eye contact cameras just to remember what happened the night before. And like what Colin Farrell said in a recent interview, he hasn't yet become the staple of Gotham City we know him as. He's still a weird little guy running through the streets. But Bruce specifically is a moody, emo boy recluse who does not know how to socialize. He barely says a word at Mayor Mitchell's funeral, and it's amazing. I love how Officer Martinez happily greets him, not knowing he was hating his guts a day or so earlier.
Hey, Mr. Wayne. Goddamn freak.
See, he knows what I'm talking about. You know, I bet if his parents were there, he'd be shyly hiding behind them. Oh. Speaking of his parents, Bruce is so committed and he's really just addicted to being Batman that he has painted such a distorted view of his family's legacy. He thinks this is the best way to continue it, and he doesn't care if it kills him.
If I can't change things here, if I can't have an effect, I don't care what happens to me.
You see this during the funeral when he sees who he thinks is Selina, and he immediately jumps back into Batman mode in order to confront her, even though Bruce Wayne, the reclusive billionaire, should not know her. Hashtag never forget. There's also the people he interacts with. Again, he's not very good at socializing. Even though he's decent towards Gordon, it's only because they're trying to solve these cases. It's just business. Though he does say this out-of-pocket thing about Commissioner Savage.
Maybe he's not who you thought. You make it sound like he had it coming.
On the other hand, he mostly treats Alfred like crap.
You're not my father.
What about you? You Wayne?
And it's even worse with Selina. He stalks her and watches her change without her knowledge, and after they've formally begun working together, he disregards her safety and doesn't care what happens to her while she infiltrates the 44 below. Now, of course, this is all part of his character arc, since after losing his parents, he emotionally closed himself off to such an extreme that he's afraid of losing someone else he cares about. Anyway, here's some various things that make me point and giggle. He cringes at sunlight, says, "That's interesting," while putting sunglasses on inside, broodingly eats a berry. The way he looks at Gordon and says, "Thumb, drive." He stands in the way of that detective and just stares at him.
Excuse me.
Whoever said this movie was humorless when it came out aligned themselves. He blends in with the background so well. I remember it took me a few watches to even register that he was there. There's that scene with him and Gordon in the police station where they look like they're going to give each other a little smooch. And when he escapes with a comically large amount of cops chasing after him, it reminds me of Lupin III running away from Zenigata.
Could have at least pulled that punch, man.
I did. I don't trust any of them. Do you?
I only trust you.
Now kiss. There's also him chasing after Penguin, and after all the damage the two caused that results in Oz's plum Maserati being flipped over, Batman walks toward it in one of the rawest shots in the movie. There's that twang of an electric guitar, the piano's going boom, boom, boom. The strings are going. Why is this not on the soundtrack? I'm gonna go insane. And then Batman goes, peekaboo. Now this is camp. You see how terrified Oz is that you do start to think it is really weird that guy didn't mention him once in The Penguin. You can watch my Sophia Falcone video if you want to hear more of my thoughts on the show. Cough, cough, shameless plug, cough, cough. Anyway, then Bruce makes a giant evidence board on the floor of his own penthouse with spray paint just for the drama of it all, and looks through old crusty dusty files while shirtless. Why? I don't know. 'Cause he can. When he goes to the Iceberg Lounge to confront Carmine Falcone about his parents, he looks like a lost puppy in the rain compared to when he first did it as Batman. When Riddler gets the upper hand during the interrogation and starts singing Ave Maria, Batman gets so furious that he tries punching the shatterproof glass. Like, what does he think that's gonna do? There's also the way he pronounces psychopath.
Pathetic psychopath.
After Cinema Wins pointed out that he says it like psychopath, I can't unhear it. And during the climax, when he takes that shot of adrenaline, which I do have to agree, it kind of comes out of nowhere, he starts beating the living daylights out of that Riddler crony, and Matt Reeves himself said that had Gordon not stopped him, Batman would have crossed that line, broken his no-kill rule, and beaten him to death. But the way he holds out his fists, it makes the most Batman-sounding panting grunts.
Take it easy.
What a silly Billy. Oh, and there's also this moment. Bat make bat go bonk. But do you want to know what is bar none the freakiest thing Batman/Bruce does in this movie? He was going to make a public appearance without cufflinks.
Where are your cufflinks?
I couldn't find them.
You can't go out like that.
Is he insane? I laugh at Bruce whenever he's being broody or does something goofy because I genuinely love this character, and a guy dressing up as a bat to fight crime is an inherently campy concept, but I really want to praise Rob's performance. Maybe it's because this is my favorite movie of his, but I do believe this is his best performance. I've brought it up and I'll say it once more. I love his non-verbal acting. I just adore how much he emotes with his eyes and how he carries the death of his parents on his shoulders as if he's Atlas. When he enters the funeral, he doesn't say a damn word, but you know everything he's thinking. The way panic settles in when he sees Riddler and how he connects the dots that allows him to save Mayor Mitchell's son. His furrowed brow when he sees the envelope addressed to him. And later when Selina and Riddler bring up Bruce Wayne while he's Batman, he has to try so hard to stay calm and not give away his identity. Ugh, he's incredible. Fun fact, a couple months ago I had to give a presentation for my interpersonal communication class about oculesics, which is the study of eye behavior, and I used the scene of Riddler unknowingly taunting Batman about his real identity as my example of it in media. My professor said it was a really good example, and I'm quite proud of myself for it. This was my first Robert Pattinson movie and what made me fall in love with him as an actor. So yes, it is the Batman's fault as to why this video exists. Alright, now we can take our seats. There we go. As much as a freak Bruce/Batman is in this, I can't really find myself putting it any higher. Maybe it's because I've watched it so many times that I'm conditioned to it, but I found the rest of these films to be more shocking in that regard, since I watched most of them for the first time for this video. At the end of the day, this is a really dumb way to rank some movies, and I just want to have fun. So let's move on. A 17-year-old girl named Charlotte, played by Holiday Granger, gets pregnant after her cheating boyfriend's condom accidentally falls off while they were doing it, and she struggles with deciding if she wants to keep the baby. Meanwhile, her mom is Nellie from The Office, and even though she's 33 years old, she finds out she's adopted because her mom just kind of forgot to tell her. Nellie decides to track down her birth mother, and she discovers that she and her husband were charged for manslaughter after neglecting their other daughter, so Nellie's sister, and the mom has the audacity to say this to her.
I didn't want you 30-odd years ago, and I don't want you now.
And also Charlotte decides to raise the baby and the two live happily ever after. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot Rob was in this. Don't worry, the movie did too, even though this is what the poster looks like on Letterboxd. You know how I said I don't get misled by movie posters very often? Yeah, it happened again. Rob doesn't show up until we're 13 minutes in, and he probably has a collective 10 or 15 minutes of screen time as Daniel. He's this dorky classmate of Charlotte, and oh my gosh, look at this man. His ridiculous hair and his silly little glasses and his silly little scarves and his silly little rainbow sweater. Charlotte's boyfriend refuses to accept responsibility for the child, so Rob kind of takes the mantle, which is sweet. He does fine with what he was given, and he gets probably the best line in the whole thing.
You know, when I see women giving birth on TV, there's all this gripping bedsteads and rolling around in agony. This is a bit boring.
A few moments later.
Though he does say this.
Hey,
This guy's Batman. And then during the last 5 minutes, the movie gets rid of his glasses because I guess he's hot now. Yeah, this poster is incredibly misleading. Overall, it's a very mid-TV movie where just about everyone's accents sound like "Got a secret, can you keep it?" With the word bad in the title, I went into this thinking it was a raunchy Robert Pattinson comedy like Bad Teacher, Bad Grandpa, or Bad Santa. You know, those kind of movies. But instead what I got was an absolutely bizarre but ever so mildly intriguing story about adoption and teenage pregnancy. If Rob did have more involvement with the story, this would be higher. Once again, look at this man. This feels like the kind of movie someone like Drew Gooden would make a video on because of Rob's performance and how crazy the plot goes, so I for one would love to see it. Drew, if you're watching this for some reason, please do it. The movie's free to watch on Internet Archive. Also, we met at VidCon back in 2019. Okay, love you! I've seen worse, let alone from Rob's filmography, but I have also definitely seen better, let alone from Rob's filmography. With one single shot, I can convince you why this movie is as high as it is. Berries and cream, I'm a little lad who loves berries and cream. Would any of you believe me if I said this was a Salvador Dali biopic with Rob playing none other than the man himself? Look at this little freak. Listen to his goofy accent.
Salvador Felipe, haciendo Dali Dominic.
It's inconsistent and he loses it at one point or another, but I do have to give him props for at least attempting. And I like to see it as a setup for the amazing varied accents he does in his later work. And look at this, he gets a silly little top hat too, but he gets rid of the hair 20 minutes in, then eventually grows Dali's iconic mustache, and even shaves his head at one point. The movie is about Dali's career and also relationship with writer Federico Garcia Lorca. They even touch on his collaboration with Luis Buñuel in making Un Chien Andalou, which is where this famous scene "I'm too much of a coward to show" comes from. Rob does a number of freaky things in this movie, like deciding that hair was a good look, but also spying on Federico, and when he spots him, he pretends to be asleep, just hanging out on the windowsill in broad daylight. He sneaks around and follows him while he's with his girlfriend Magdalena, then eventually runs into them and is like, "Wow, crazy seeing you guys here." He also says this.
You're more like some animal that's been skinned.
I'm trying to get very drunk. Thank you very much. I've recently escaped from prison.
I would love an enema!
But then, once again, he gets freaky with Federico where they start making out, and Magdalena comes in, so she and Fed start doing it, even though she's aware Sal's still in the room, and Sal just watches and masturbates while he and Fed make intense eye contact? Once again, this is not the last time a character of Rob's jerks off. Aside from that, it's another standard romance story that may not even be historically accurate, but I guess I learned a thing or two about Salvador Dali, so that's neat. There are very few movies I give a 1 out of 10 or half-star rating to because I like to remain, positive and save them for movies that personally offend me or are equivalent to one of the 12 labors of Hercules to get through. How to Be is one of them. Did it have to do with the fact that I could practically count the pixels on the only version I could find of this? Maybe, who knows. Then it became available on the Roku channel in HD after I watched it, because of course it did. But this was excruciatingly boring. That was acted and shot in the most stilted way you could imagine. But I'm not ranking these movies in this way now, am I? Rob is a socially awkward 20-something going through an existential crisis, and he tries his best to act that way. Like another movie later on, it's in that gray area where I can't tell if it's intentionally funny or so bad it's good. This is one of his earliest roles, so I do think his amateur acting has something to do with it. But do you want to see some of the freaky things he says and does? Here's him trying to scoff, but it sounds like pitiful coughs instead.
What?
This is how he describes his grandmother having cancer.
She was painted with the cancer brush tumor.
Here's him and his friend hanging out with two girls.
I've got an erection.
Here's him aggressively making his bed. Here's him getting angry. Here's him being angry again. By the way, this is the context.
Have you ever felt guilty about producing such a pathetic, useless child?
Of course I feel guilty.
So no, I did not edit that song in there. And this is what he says to the boy who is now living in his childhood bedroom.
It's exactly what my bed was, but it was over there and it was different.
Are fireplaces in bedrooms in the UK a thing? And on the second floor of the house? Said boy asks him to get out of bed, and Rob responds by putting a blanket over himself. He also sticks his head into a grocery store freezer and stays there as his limbs go limp. Okay, I will admit that was a good joke. There's this weird lingering shot of him hunched over while he's eating his breakfast as it just ends and cuts to the next scene. He plays basketball at a community center and tries to make about a half-dozen shots but misses all of them. He wears sunglasses inside, and when his mom asks him to take them off, he does for 2 seconds but then puts them back on. He also gets into his parents' bed while they're sleeping because it's a symbol of unconditional love or something. There's this other scene where he's talking to his ex-girlfriend who's an elementary school teacher, and he just follows her into the bathroom and just continues talking by peering over her stall. Yeah, she calls him out on it, but then she doesn't flush the toilet and washes her hands by putting them under water for 2 seconds. Ew. Just about all the characters in this movie are freaks. Rob gets help from a Canadian self-help guru, and he receives a letter from him that says, "I have your address, so there is no need for you to meet me at the airport," which is terrifying. His parents are straight up awful to him, and at one point his dad says his existence is an oxymoron. One of Rob's friends says there's 50 million single women in London, which, like, no? There's barely even 40 million people in the state of California. Oh, and of course I can't forget about the uncle character, who has maybe a solid 3 minutes of screen time, next to no lines, but he has a Confederate flag hanging outside his house. It's on screen in the background for collective 5 or 10 seconds. It's never acknowledged, and in case you haven't picked up on it yet, this takes place in England? What is this movie? Anyway, I watched this just after seeing A Nightmare on Elm Street for the first time, so seeing a crusty poster of it was cool, I guess. Can I stop talking about this movie now? Oh right, I can. This is my video. I can stop whenever I want. Now it's time for some actual cinema. Fear and Shame, aka Robert Pattinson desperately needs a New York City hot dog. Rob is playing as himself in this, so I guess it might as well be considered a documentary, but he is such a maniac in this, there was absolutely no way I could leave it off the list. And this is on letterboxd, so yeah, of course I was going to count it anyway. Clocking in at a staggering 2 minutes and 36 seconds, it's a Marxist look into the innate human desire to satisfy one's hunger. That's what Marxism is, right? I wasn't there for that day in school. Whatever. It's Rob running around New York to get a hot dog, and it's sensational. Written in 10 minutes by none other than the man himself, Rob weaves his way through the streets of NYC in search of a hot dog, even excellently weaving his own personal experiences of dealing with social anxiety after becoming famous. I hope in a post-COVID world he has an easier time going out in public since masks are more socially accepted. I showed this to the Schaeferless production editors at one point, which meant I was spreading the Rob propaganda, and it was delightful. A lot of Rob's freakiness comes from his impeccable line deliveries, where all his dialogue is an internal monologue as he manically struggles to step out of his isolated hotel room and get a bite to eat.
I can't leave.
There's also some great audio editing where his voices overlap with one another to display his descent into madness. He's got this awesome, growly voice, showcasing that he has the chops to be an amazing voice actor, and this came out 60 years before The Boy and the Heron. I think about the short film on a weekly basis and will constantly whisper the quotes to myself.
This city is a labyrinth designed to mock me. You can call me Rob, I eat hot dogs. Seal myself back in the bubble. Now I can breathe.
And my favorite.
You don't know where the hot dogs from.
Oh, how I wish this was nominated for an Oscar. Also, he puts his phone in his mouth and it's become one of my favorite profile pictures to use. Yes, this short is 2.5 minutes long, but I am being completely unironic when I say this is some of Rob's best work. If this became a series where he went around different cities and trying food, I would be its #1 fan, whether or not he was playing this exaggerated version of himself. There's some truth to how he presents himself in the short because of how much creative control he had in it, so I give massive props to him. If you're looking for a good laugh, I highly recommend checking out this cinematic masterpiece right here on YouTube. Cosmopolis has an interesting concept with a painfully mid-execution. A billionaire travels in a limo across Manhattan amidst a political riot in order to get a haircut as his life falls apart over the course of a day. To make a very pretentious comparison, it's kind of a modern-day Oedipus Rex, with Rob playing the role of the tragic Greek hero. Self-mutilation and everything. Well, I'm using hero loosely here, but hey, there's a reason why I was taught that in school and not this movie. Rob is fine in this, albeit stilted, though it's really David Cronenberg's script that makes he and the rest of the cast not sound or act like normal humans.
Makes the same noises it made in the 17th century, along with all the other noises that have evolved since then.
I miss things. I don't know what money is anymore.
We die, Jane. On weekends. People. It happens.
The idea is time. Living in the future.
They go on and on about economics and the meaning of life, and you know how haters of the Before trilogy complain about Jesse and Celine yapping about pretentious topics? Yeah, this movie is the embodiment of that mindset. It's like the opposite of Rob's good acting. They say so much but end up saying nothing at all. Look, it's not like I'm against dialogue-heavy movies, just as long as said dialogue is actually interesting. But I mean, I guess it fits. Eric Packer is an out-of-touch billionaire after all. Oh, sorry, I got the name wrong. It's David Zaslav. First of all, the man is very insistent to go across town in a limo because he really wants a haircut. He literally looks fine. This is the third movie in which he wears sunglasses inside, even though he's in a tinted limo. Because he also says these insane things.
Good, I'm hungry for something thick and chewy.
You have your mother's breasts. Great. Stand-up tits.
He's saying that to his wife, by the way.
Do people still shoot at presidents? I thought they were more stimulating targets.
He also asks where limos go at night and why airports are called airports, but then cheats on his wife and gets freaky with Juliette Binoche and this other woman who tells him she was gifted this taser that goes up to 100,000 volts, and Rob wants her to stun him because he's, quote, looking for more. It cuts to the next scene with no evidence that he was tased, so who knows. In between his screwing, his wife is immediately suspicious, and at first he's like, nuh-uh, but then he's like, it's not the sex you think I had, it's the sex I want. What does that even mean? Then there's this other woman he talks to in his limo, and they make intense eye contact while he's, you're not gonna believe this, getting a prostate exam.
Your prostate is asymmetrical.
That becomes a whole thing that's revealed in the climax. Oh yeah, Paul Giamatti's in this movie. There's this bodyguard that's been accompanying Rob, and he has this voice-activated gun, so Rob asks if he can see it and to activate it, then proceeds to blow his brains out, even though he's damn well aware he has 2 witnesses. That's what the guy gets for killing Alex, I guess. 3 for 3 on Lost references, oh my. He finally gets his stupid haircut, even though he, once again, looks fine, and that's when Paul Giamatti enters the picture.
Eric Michael Packer!
There's a shot of Rob going down this alley, tracking him down, and he playfully shakes his gun in his hand, and it goes so hard. Hello? Anyway, the last 30 minutes of this movie are the best part, and it's really because it's these 2 fantastic actors going head to head. I really want to see them together in a movie again. They're in this dilapidated apartment where Paul has a towel over his head for some reason. Rob shoots his own hand. It's great. However, this movie, and particularly its ending, are on its hands and knees, begging to be viewed and analyzed in film classes. Oh, does Rob Rob die? I don't know. Oh, shut up. Yeah, if you can't tell already, I'm not a fan of the David Cronenberg movies I've seen. It's interesting to analyze it as a modern-day Greek tragedy in retrospect, but at the same time, I get so little out of the viewing experience itself. If it weren't for its bizarre script, this would be among my favorites in Rob's filmography, but I guess we can't always have what we want, now can we? This is one of Rob's favorite projects that he worked on, so I won't take that away from him. He got his hair cut. Congrats. Let's move on. Guys.
I have come to describe for you your end days.
Known as being that one Timothée Chalamet movie where that behind-the-scenes photo of him is used as the official poster, it follows his rise to power as Henry V of England. Rob doesn't have an awful lot of screen time in this as the rivaling Dauphin. Rob doesn't have an awful lot of screen time in this as the rivaling Dauphin of France, and only shows up about halfway through, but with that ridiculous accent of his, I had a big old dumb smile on my face.
That is what you're hoping.
He's first mentioned earlier when he gives Henry a ball, even though he's received all these other lavish gifts to celebrate his coronation. His right-hand man views it as an insult to him and his kingdom, but Henry's like, no, it represents when I was a silly Billy who got into shenanigans when I was a wee prince. The Dauphin also wears these silly little sleeves when he's comforting this young English boy whose brothers were killed by his men just for playing in the forest. But then, as an intimidation tactic, he makes said young boy carry one of the heads of his brothers into the English camp to send a warning. Bro! Well, he does some other ridiculous things. He makes fun of Timmy Chalamet's penis size.
Giant balls.
He, a Frenchman, literally says, English please. And after the climactic battle, he challenges Henry to duel, but he keeps slipping and falling on mud, so Henry stakes his sword into the ground and lets some of his men finish the job. I found this movie boring. I do not have any interest in the English or French monarchy, and I was twiddling my thumbs waiting for Rob to appear. He's the best part of the movie, along with a bunch of other ones on this list, but because he's such an absurd character in an otherwise very dramatic movie, that I can't really tell if my enjoyment is ironic or unironic. If you're curious about his performance, you're better off watching scenes of him on YouTube.
It's perchance that is fitting of your mind.
You can't just say perchance.
I am Drew, I am Danny, and we are not the same person.
Let's all take a moment to appreciate this. Ugh, beautiful. New Robert Pattinson movie! Woo! After many delays, it's finally here. Bong Joon-ho's follow-up to his history-making Parasite. That already feels like it was forgotten about. Leading up to the release, I read the book, and I did like it, but I do much prefer the movie. But if you were wondering what was up with the calorie rations and Timo, it may not have as tight of a script as Parasite, but I had a blast watching this movie. Bong Joon-ho gives us his signature blend of drama and offbeat comedy. Jung Chael, composer of Parasite and even Squid Game, gives us a really great piano soundtrack. And just like with Poor Things, Mark Ruffalo absolutely commits to the bit with another amazing, albeit terrifyingly realistic, performance. But how is my guy? Listen to his voice. Listen to his voice.
I'm perfectly good meat. I taste fine.
He's a dweeb, he's heartfelt, he's intimidating, he's hilarious, he's everything I've expected to see from Rob and more. He is a freak. He even manages to sneak in his Batman voice for 2 seconds, yet it's utilized so naturally.
Are you afraid to die?
Despite being the same person, he makes both Mickeys feel like separate people with distinct body language, facial expressions, and personalities.
Oh, saving me for the kiddos. What a great mom.
Yeah, I see it in that schmuck face of yours. You're the one that gave me this, right?
Oopsie. First, let's go through Mickey's 1 through 17, since they're all more or less similar to one another. Well, first of all, 2 through 17 are all made out of waste. Food, animal, human, you name it. But they're well-meaning guys who didn't know any better about what the expendable job truly was, and they are such troopers. They repeatedly get poisoned and poked and prodded just to develop a vaccine for the ice planet Niflheim. The fact that Bong Joon-ho changed the number from 7 to 17 just so we can kill Rob 10 more times? Ugh, Iconic. And the way Rob contorts his posture and body language transforms himself into someone completely unrecognizable. It's some absolutely incredible physicality. There's that scene at Marshall's private dinner where 17 starts vomiting the very food he was so desperately hungry for, and he's writhing on the floor, and you feel so bad for him. But now let's move on to Mickey 18. He's a more aggressive iteration of all the Mickeys, and Bong described him as an evil twin brother. When he and 17 find out they're multiples, 18's first instinct is to kill 17 since the existence of multiples is taboo. So he yeets a dumbbell into 17's head and attempts to throw him into the recycler where all the food and animal and human waste gets grinded up. And then 18 tries to kill 17's friend, Timo, since he's dealing drugs, and later he just absolutely crashes out on 17 for how he handled the dinner. And of course we can't forget about 18, Leon Cholgoshing his way to the head of the line to attempt to assassinate Marshall with a concealed gun and everything. That silly goose. But I can't believe he missed. How did this happen again? Now I do believe there's one thing I'm missing. Oh yeah, 18 tells Mickey's girlfriend Nasha that 17 is still alive, so the three of them start getting freaky with one another. Add self-cess to the list, I guess. 18 twirls 17's hair, and it's like, what? They do get caught while they're in the middle of it, but do you want to know where they don't and where they get to finish, as it were? Watching Mickey 17 the second time around for this video, its excessive plot threads began to creep up on me, much like the creepers. Mickey crushes on these two women before and after he meets Nasha that don't go anywhere. Marshall's wife is obsessed with sauce for some reason, and the third act revolving around the hostage situation goes on for a while. The feuding Mickeys are the best part of the movie, and I think the screen time dedicated to those subplots could have gone to strengthening their bond, because I think it would have made 18's ultimate sacrifice more satisfying. Oh well, I still think it's a great movie that didn't deserve to underperform at the box office. But Warner Brothers seems to be doing just fine with two of their other releases, for better or for worse. Bong Joon-ho's next movie is an animated one called The Valley, and ooh, I love when live-action directors give animated productions a go. It'll also be in Korean, and it's not every day we get a Korean animated movie, so this should be fun. Anyway, this redhead girl kind of looks familiar. I'm not really sure where I've seen her. Oh my god! Finally, I get to talk about an animated movie. Though since this is Studio Ghibli we're talking about and they throw around copyright strikes like confetti, I'm just gonna be safe and copyright proof the footage. It's been a year and a half since The Boy and the Heron came out, and I still cannot believe how amazing and stacked the English cast is. That's Christian Bale? That's Willem Dafoe? That's Robert Pattinson? It is a little weird talking about a movie that he himself doesn't appear in and isn't even in his original language, but it is a movie that he is involved with, so I'm gonna make it work. The gray heron is a weird little guy who can look like a normal bird one moment, then he grows human teeth, there's a nose somewhere in there, and eventually he's just a goblin man wearing a bird suit. Early on we see him have these weird mannerisms, like the way he squeezes himself into that hole in the tower and pokes his head back up, and even gulping down an entire fish. He taunts Mahito about his dead mother by going all, "Save me, Mahito!" and even creating a goopy, slimy version of her. But the two eventually befriend each other, and the heron helps Mahito escape the world that he purposely dragged him into. He wants to be perceived as intimidating with how he threatens to tear out Mahito's heart, but when Mahito one-ups him by almost killing him, it's revealed he's a pathetic dweeb. He even tries to betray him later in the movie, but he can't since he needs help with his beak. They bounce really well off each other, and it's fun to watch their dynamic progress. But once again, I have to talk about Rob's performance. Look at this man and tell me you believe this voice is coming from him.
It sticks out a little bit. My hair! That really bugs me.
Exactly. Maybe it's because I only hear it as a voiceover, but out of all the accents he does in his movies, including Ring of the Nibelungs, this is the one I find most mind-boggling. I still can't wrap my head around it. I can't believe we haven't even gotten any behind-the-scenes footage of him doing the voice, to the point that part of me doubts it really is him. But if it is, I'm desperately praying that this isn't the last we hear of his voice acting. His upcoming schedule that I'll get into later is going to keep him awfully busy for a while, so let's hope we hear about something eventually. Oh right, I forgot I'm not completely done with these movies. The only way to watch Twilight is with the Schaefer-less editors over Discord and riffing on it MST3K style. I brought up the movies with them being aware I was making this video, and William, who's in charge of our weekly movie night, said, "Hey, guess what, we're watching Twilight now." So yes, technically it is my fault I made James watch Twilight, but it's not like I asked him to. This was an experience. It is absolutely bizarre editing, a wildly terrible script, and the color grading is ridiculous. Like I said, I'm glad they got rid of it in the later movies. But how's Rob in this? Well, I feel sorry for him more than anything since he has to work with a script with nuggets of genius like
my own personal brand of heroin. This is the skin of a killer, Bill. You better hold on tight, spider monkey.
However, Edward is indeed a bona fide freak. There's the whole thing with the BO, which I just... how do I even put this into words? And then he just stares at Bella throughout class. It's like that scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off where the camera pans to, jump scare warning, Charlie Sheen just staring at Jeannie, and it's for comedic effect. But for this, it's meant to be taken seriously, but I think it ends up making it funnier. And the way he says hello in biology class, what is he doing? The Cullens are referred to as freaks, so I guess it's nice the movie is aware of it. There's that scene where Bella asks Edward if he's wearing contacts because his eyes look different. He says no and says it's the fluorescence, then just walks away in the middle of the conversation. What's really funny, and maybe unfortunate, is that I had this exact same conversation with a coworker where they thought I was wearing contacts because my eyes looked different than usual, and I said no, because I wasn't. And since I had just watched the movie, I was so tempted to say it was the fluorescence, but I was afraid they were either going to take that literally or just not get it. A weird interaction, yeah, but that doesn't make me a Cullen, right? Then of course we have Edward gaslighting Bella into thinking he was across the parking lot when he very clearly saved her from an oncoming car. People have thrown the term gaslighting around a lot the past couple years, and I personally do not use it lightly, but this is the textbook definition of it, where he tries to convince Bella that what she saw was all in her head and making her doubt her sense of reality. Thankfully Bella knows better than that, so good for O. During the scene of the two of them laying on the grass, we debated over whether or not Edward would honk shoo or honk me me me, and we came to the conclusion that only freaks honk me me me, and Edward is, well, he's the kind of guy to honk me me me, or honk me me Minneapolis, according to the autocorrect on the notes I was taking while watching this movie. Also, he's been creeping into Bella's room to watch her sleep for months, which, what? And there's that other scene when he's hanging out on the side of Bella's car while she's driving, and he's like, hey, can you move over? And they change positions, and they're so nonchalant about it. Oh yeah, and he sparkles in direct sunlight. Obviously, I had to mention that. But something else he does is listen to Claire de Lune. Only the absolute freaks listen to Claire de Lune. They really decided to go all out with Edward in the first movie, didn't they? Whatever, I'm so done talking about these movies. Though I guess I do have to answer the age-old question. Team Edward or Team Jacob? Team Alice, guys. It's not that hard. Now I can go back to blasting 1,000 years in my car. For this next movie, I feel like I need to shift the tone, but I'm not really sure how to do it. Yeah, I think I'll work. Hope you guys are fond of me lobster.
Fortnite.
Ooh, I have been looking forward to this one. Both rewatching it and talking about it. Well, I watched it twice for this video. Shout out to Frida Cinema, my beloved. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, both playing Thomases, slowly lose their minds for an hour and 50 minutes, and it's incredible. For the longest time, I was afraid of watching this movie. At the time, I never watched horror movies, and while I have been dipping my toes into them more recently, this did help me get introduced to the genre. I was considering checking it out after I fell in love with Willem Dafoe as an actor, but then soon after I saw Rob in The Batman that really made me want to watch it. I thought it was great at first, but just like Thomas Howard's fascination with the enchantment in the light, my love for it festered. I said in my letterboxd review the first time I watched this movie that I'll always prefer bright, colorful visuals in my movies, but this and Shadow are great examples of how much you can do with a lack thereof. The shadows are the blackest of blacks, as if I'm staring into the abyss, and the highlights are the whitest of whites, blinding me with every chance they got. At one point I had to blink away as Wake lifted the lantern into frame because it's just that impactful. And talk about Rob, I mean, he absolutely kills it in this movie, and I adore his slow descent into madness. At first he's pretty normal during the first 40 minutes. Yeah, he finds his mermaid figurine, he sees something in the water, and while on the job he uses the time to, get this, masturbate. But I guess it's not that bad. Yeah. And fun fact about that seagull prop, Rob said it was just a rubber chicken with feathers on it, and every time he beat it against the rock, it honked. As the movie progresses, more and more things take part in his declined sanity. At one point, he has to dump out these buckets he and Wake used to go to the bathroom, but they end up flying back into his face. He also wishes to have sex with a steak. There's that whole scene of the two of them yelling what to each other. He does whatever he's doing here in the rain. He continues to masturbate and imagines himself getting freaky with a mermaid. He sees a doppelganger version of himself, and this came out before Mickey 17. Wow! He and Wake have a little dance party, and it's so nice. Dance, Winslow! Dance! Then they slow dance, almost give each other a smooch, but their suppressed homoeroticism makes them break out into a fist fight instead. Such fun. They go back to cuddling, and Howard, who's actually been going by the name Ephraim Winslow this whole time, reveals he took the name from his coworker who he saw die at the lumber mill they worked at and didn't even try to save him. He just stared at him. Seeing what he does during the climax, you can probably make the conclusion that he killed him, and he's struggling with guilt of that. He also chooses to stay sober when he first arrives on the island because he thinks getting drunk is a waste of time, but eventually he gets absolutely wasted, and that's how he and Wake dance the night away. And earlier in the movie, you see a slight shift in body language when Howard asks Wake what his name is. I caught that during this rewatch, and I love that detail. Speaking of Wake, he might be more insane than Howard. He's the one who's been a lighthouse wickie all these decades, and with how much he farts and crashes out on Howard for not being fond of his lobster, he's definitely got a couple screws loose. He's also worse than Edward with how much he gaslights Howard. Howard tries to escape the island. Wake chops up his rowboat and chases him with an axe, and when Howard accuses him of that, Wake is like, "Nuh-uh, you were the one doing all that." But then he goes off on Wake and calls him out on his excessive farting. Guys, this is a prestigious art house movie, I swear. And the last 15 minutes devolve into complete insanity, as if it weren't insane already. Howard treats Wake like an actual dog and puts some dirt in his eye, and when Wake retaliates, it ends with him getting an axe to the head. Howard finally goes up to the lighthouse that Wake has been gaslighting, gatekeeping, wiki-bossing this entire time, screams at the big light bulb, falls down the stairs, and ends up in purgatory, with seagulls eating his innards. Bad luck to kill a seabird. Yeah. Then the credits start rolling. Hurrah, the yellow girls, do let me go. Whoa! I've already talked about how Rob expertly conveys 1,000 words with just a look in his eyes, but this particular scene is a prime example. After Howard hallucinates about sirens and the real Ephraim Winslow, it stays on his mind. When he asks Wake about what happened to the last wiki, Wake says he died because he went mad seeing things that Howard saw. At first, Howard's looking down at his food, just trying to make small talk, but when Wake starts talking about what Howard is experiencing, Howard's eye contact becomes laser focused on him. He even stops chewing and his body movement goes to a standstill. After a few moments of silence, he scoffs and shrugs it off, denying the idea that he could be next. He's incredible. I find myself going back to this scene often on YouTube just for that moment, and I love it. Another thing that periodically lingers on my mind are the guttural, absolutely blood-curdling screams that escape from Rob throughout the movie. They add yet another air of uneasiness to this movie, and I love it because of that. I've seen this movie 4 times now, and I still don't understand everything about it. Do I know what's up with the tentacles? No, I don't. And frankly, I don't want to know. But The Lighthouse is some of both Pattinson's and Defoe's best work, so if you have yet to see it, heat up some lobster, lock yourself in a dark room, and go watch it.
Recommend severance without pay.
Severance without pay!
Oh my gosh, Severance reference. Whew. Now, as we near the end of Rob's current filmography and his role is getting progressively freakier, I want to draw a line at this point. Most of Rob's characters can be defined as weird guys. Weird little guys who got a little too silly at one point or another. Yes, they're freaks, but for the most part I mean that affectionately. From this point on, when I refer to them as such, I mean it in a derogatory sense. These characters commit some of the most vile, diabolical acts, and I don't want to make it look like I'm putting it in positive light and going, LOL, freak, teehee. The Dufont and Thomas Howard are awfully close to this, don't get me wrong, but there is enough, shall we say, camp in these performances that still make them enjoyable to watch. You can make the argument that any of these could be number 1, but since this is a ranking video, they have to be in some order. With that said, let's start with... Before Brady Corbet gave us The Brutalist, his directorial debut was The Childhood of a Leader. It was mid. It's the story of an American boy living in France in the 1910s as he witnessed how he's treated by his high-class parents, one of whom works in government, and how he reacts to that treatment. Meanwhile, Rob's character is a family friend and he's just kind of there. He's not really in it that much, but he does make this racist comment about Muslim people early on.
There's more and more of them here every year. It's another reason to get out of the city.
But if you look at the title, the plot, and know your world history, you might notice that some timelines match up. Yeah, so it turns out Rob is a titular character. We go through this entire movie of seeing this kid learn French, throw rocks at people, and grope a woman. Then a bunch of time passes, and he's Hitler now. He's a guy in high power who's greeted with a cheering crowd. Red banners and uniforms are adorned with this distinct insignia. He's got facial hair, but he's bald. Don't ask me why, because I don't know either. We don't see Rob like this until the very end of the movie, so he doesn't commit any atrocities that we've associated with other dictators from this time period. Corbet stated that no, it's not actually Hitler, and it's not even Mussolini or Stalin either. But when you know who and what this guy represents, can you really blame me for putting it this high? Waiting for the barbarians, more like waiting for Rob. I'm not kidding, he doesn't show up until there's almost 45 minutes left in this 2-hour movie. I like that Rob's character has a last name that's similar to mine. That's fun. Though his is singular while mine is plural, so haha, I win. But actually that probably isn't fun because Rob does practically nothing but torture people in this movie. Yay! He's the right-hand man of Johnny Depp, so already ill. Depp shows up right after the movie starts and he looks like Judge Doom with that cane and cape, and especially when he tells our main character, the magistrate, about this new invention called sunglasses. Ooh! Anyway, yeah, there he is! He beats up native people he's taken captive who have the palms of their hands sewn into their cheeks, and he orders them to kneel by tapping on the wire that's connecting each one of them, and it's so messed up. When the magistrate tries to stop it, Rob beats him up, and later he publicly humiliates him, then continues to torture him by having him hang off a branch of a tree by his arms, one of which is broken. Then when the magistrate asks him how he eats after torturing and doing all these terrible things to people, he responds with laughing in his face, then getting violent. What a fun character! I mean, Rob does a great job playing characters you will either love or hate, and the scenes of him being actively involved were probably the most interesting parts, even if they were hard to watch. But most of this movie is just the magistrate becoming infatuated with this woman, and I think it's particularly with her feet. It's a boring movie, and it is not worth your time. Based on a 1948 novel, The Haunted Airman is a 2006 BBC TV movie about Rob becoming paralyzed after piloting a bombing raid during World War II. He's sent to a hospital where he slowly begins to lose his mind as he's suffering from PTSD and paranoia. In other words, it's a diet version of The Lighthouse. It's just over an hour long, but man, this dragged. The most creative use of cinematography is with this mirror shot, I guess. Rob was though he was only 20 years old while shooting this, so I have to give him at least some credit, as well as playing a paraplegic, though I'm almost positive he moves his leg in this one shot. I also noticed how often his character was smoking, so I started counting. 14. He smokes 14 cigarettes in this barely 70-minute long movie. He even has another 2 that he doesn't light. He also says this ridiculously pretentious line.
My dearest, I'm becoming a connoisseur of silence.
So why do you have this movie so high up, you might ask? Well, that dearest he's talking to, it's his aunt-in-law. About halfway through, he has a dream about making out with her. Yeah, it's gross, but it doesn't sound like this placement justifies it that much, right? I mean, the movie's mainly just Rob going around this hospital and its premises while he starts hallucinating about spiders and mildly spooky scary things happen, and it's just really, really boring. And then BAM! During the last 2 minutes of the movie, it's revealed his aunt-in-law is having an affair with his doctor, so he pins her to the ground, rapes her, slits her throat, then continues to kiss her as she's dying while the doctor just watches. How do I... I know they're not related by blood, but still. And I think the assault is implied. They don't explicitly show anything, but she is struggling and it makes me feel gross. Anyway, this movie's got another poster problem. This is the second case of a Robert Pattinson film having a misleading poster, because even though this and The Bad Mother's Handbook came out before Twilight, they retroactively got redesigned posters to cater towards the fangirls. Unfortunately, one of them worked on me, but thankfully I saw the one for the Haunted Airman after I saw it. And I mean, just look at this, it is so shameless. Starring Twilight's Robert Pattinson, using the same font for its logo, and this isn't what he looks like in the movie. I'm pretty sure that's just a promotional still of him as Edward. They're not even trying to hide it. And you want to know something else I discovered after watching this? Daniel Pemberton scored the movie. That Daniel Pemberton. Graphic design is my passion. A paycheck's a paycheck, I guess. Anyway. Oh shit. I was dreading rewatching this movie for this video. I mean, it's a great one, don't get me wrong, but if you know, you know. Good Time is a greasy, grimy look into one man's hijinks in his attempt to bail his brother out of prison. Connie and Nick rob a bank with these masks, which, like, whoa, it goes wrong and they end up getting this explosive hot pink powder on them, and around this time Connie manages to escape, but Nick gets arrested and put into jail, but he badly gets injured, so he's sent to the hospital. Connie essentially kidnaps him so they can escape, but before he does that, he ducks into an old woman's hospital room to hide and takes care of her for a little bit. Wow, he has some humanity. I guess he really does care and is a good person after all. Yeah, so the two end up escaping, and Connie takes advantage of a woman's kindness in order to get on the bus first, but then eventually uses it again by coming to her house to get access to a phone. And here we're introduced to the teenager Crystal, as well as Ray, who, if I recall correctly, is not Connie's brother, so Connie kinda sorta accidentally kidnaps a complete stranger. Whoops, silly Connie. Anyway, eventually he starts making out with Crystal. It's revolting, and at first you think he's doing it as a cover-up since they're watching the news and one of the segments is all about him, and you think he should have tried at least changing the channel, but nope. Had they not been interrupted, I think they would have gone all the way. I looked down at my phone and I tried unlocking it with Face ID during the scene, but it didn't recognize me because of how much I was cringing. He also bleaches his hair to disguise himself.
You dyed your hair.
Yeah. He's kind of a weirdo.
Wow, he's so quirky. Later, he and Ray sneak into this amusement park to get the Sprite MacGuffin, and Connie beats up the security guard, allows Ray to drug said security guard, because the Sprite just happens to be laced with acid. Connie strips said security guard, then poses as one and frames him as a trespasser, and he gets taken away. He's screaming gibberish because of how high he is, and it's excruciating to watch. Then when the cops find Crystal and ask Connie if she's involved, he waves her off, they take her away, and just like the security guard, we don't see her for the rest of the movie. Watching it at the moment, it is a betrayal, but considering what would follow after, they would have taken her in as an accomplice, so her getting away relatively scot-free was for the best. But yeah, the following morning, Connie gets caught, Ray tries to escape but falls to his death, and Connie gets arrested and taken away. The way the camera lingers on him and slowly pushes in on his face for a full minute is haunting to watch. Is he grieving Ray's death? Is he feeling remorse for how he treated Crystal and the security guard? Probably not. Is he processing that he might never see his brother again? Is he figuring out a plan to break out and continue to try to bail Nick? Who knows? I will admit, when you have two cats sleeping on your lap while you're watching this movie, it does make the experience slightly less uncomfortable, but it's still a damn good one at that. There's some humorous moments here and there.
Don't be confused. It's just gonna make it worse for me.
Scenes like the trio driving to the amusement park or Connie evading arrest are shot like you're watching a police pursuit on the news. The electronic score fits really well with the neon aesthetic and Connie weaseling his way through the city. And when you're watching the end credits, you find out one of the dogs' names is Muppet and Underpants? Bro, what? And once again, Rob completely disappears into this role. You can tell Connie has genuine love for his brother, but it doesn't matter because it's so twisted and toxic, and his actions are what result in Nick getting thrown in prison. And, you know, him being a pedophile. If you are this far into this video and somehow still believe that Robert Pattinson is nothing more than the guy from the Bad Vampire movie, then you owe it to yourself to watch one of his best performances in one of the best movies in his filmography. Before we get to Rob's freakiest and most disgusting role, I want to do somewhat of an honorable mention segment. This is...
Hey, I'm Robert Pattinson, and
I'm gonna talk about some of my iconic performances. So stupid. Hey, bonjour. Bonjour.
If you could describe this film and your Batman in 3 words, how would you describe it?
Another question I haven't been asked. Oh, I can't do my autopilot. It's crazy, sexy, cool.
We're incredibly nervous.
We didn't get any jokes in our one. Oh, that is a classic. Jesus Christ, that was a bad idea.
What? I did it! Almost.
You enjoying yourself? Right now.
I have no idea.
My normal attitude as myself is kind of just like a rodent.
My love? Hi, my angel. No, I said my angel.
Have we heard your American accent?
Mine's like sidewalk. Or like candy.
Beautiful view. This is just Paris. Just Paris.
I play a character called Thomas Winslow. No, that's not even his name. Jesus Christ. Thomas Howard.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm really good. I kind of feel sad.
Why?
It's the end.
Oh.
Wait, I'm not on some TV show, am I?
No, you're not on TV. You are going to be on the internet, though.
No, I don't want to.
And somehow I ended up biting the baby on the head. And there was a photo of it afterwards.
You can't compete one guy against the whole marketing department going like, oh, it's a romantic odyssey, it's beautiful. Like, no, it's disgusting.
That when I asked him how the movie was, he said like, well, it's basically Willem going, arr, 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 and you going like, ong, 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 ong. And I'm like, oh great, sounds great.
Did you know that a couple of years ago, a team of scientists actually voted you as the most handsome man in the world?
I did know that.
He does.
You did?
Well, I know, because it's fact. I'm wearing, is it Magneta? No, is that even a word?
What's the name of the color?
Magneta?
Magenta? Magenta?
Magenta.
All right, we'll let you enjoy the rest of your night.
Yeah,
We appreciate it, man. All right, looking forward to your future work and best of luck to everything.
Thank you very much.
All right, good night, man.
A paparazzo actually being respectable toward a celebrity? Well, I hope he's proud of where Rob is now. All right, let's just get into it. And the movie starring Robert Pattinson's freakiest role is... This is one messed up movie. I hesitate to say I liked it because of how heavy it is, but I did think it was very good and it kept me engaged throughout its runtime, especially with having one mighty fine cast. Most of these big name actors aren't American, let alone from the South, but their accents blew me away. Yes, Rob's doing another southern accent, but you do notice the distinct contrast between the 3 dialects since they're based on different regions and time periods. He plays Reverend Preston Teagarden, which is just a bewildering last name for someone like him. Might as well call him Lovejoy while you're at it. He wears a frilly dress shirt, pulls a Norman Osborn for a second, and dips his fingers into the food Arden's grandma made for a potluck, but then preaches this entire sermon calling her out, being like, "You cook chicken livers? Haha, you're poor." He gives another sermon where he yells, "Delusions!" Which honestly I much prefer over Delulu. This entire scene is simply spellbinding. The fact that he actively avoided a dialect coach while preparing for this role, sometimes I don't understand how this man is real. I love how meticulous he controls the volume on particular words in a phrase.
Of the so-called devil.
Adds emphasis to specific words.
But only through his faith.
And will slightly elongate the syllable of a word and then sharply end another.
Blaspheme in the Lord in your mind and in your heart.
However, you know how I said Connie and Crystal don't go all the way together? Preston does it. He does it. And not with one girl, but It's vile. Especially because he's using his power as a preacher to groom these girls and do what he wants with them, particularly Lenora, Arvin's younger sister. She's a lonely girl who wants to obey God, so Preston takes advantage of that. He says that what they're doing is spending time with the Lord and she should show herself to him as God made her. He does the Edward thing where he gets her pregnant and blames her for it, but this time it's because it's going to taint his reputation. So he manipulates her into killing herself, and right when she realizes the mistake she made, it's too late. It is absolutely brutal. And then Preston finds another young girl to continue doing it with, and however, this does lead to the best scene in the movie where Arvin confronts Preston in the church. Arvin is sitting a few pews behind him in the shadows, quote-unquote confessing that he's been fooling around with a young girl. And when the details start getting more explicit, like mentioning how she rides away on her bike, you see the way Preston's face darkens when he realizes that Arvin is talking about him, and it is fantastic acting. The showdown officially begins with Arvin holding him at gunpoint and Preston attempting to talk his way out of it by saying it's somehow not his fault. But of course that doesn't work, so Preston shoots and kills him. I was really afraid Arvin was going to take his word for it and believe him, but he knows better, so good for him. I also love how levels are used in the scene. At first they're both sitting down, but once Arvin exposes Preston, that's when they both stand up to show that the tension has been raised. Damn great stuff. This is the most I've hated a character of Rob's, but I was still mesmerized by his performance, which is what I've come to learn while watching all these movies for this insane idea of mine. I only liked about a third of the films Robert Pattinson is featured in, but I do respect him for the projects he has signed up for during and post-Twilight. He could have very well said yes to starring in every major blockbuster franchise out there, cashed in the checks, and called it a day, but he's instead decided to work with auteur directors who have unique visions that genuinely interest him. Besides, it shows off his range and how he is such an enthralling chameleon actor. He loses himself and completely embodies these characters. He can do drama, comedy, crime, western, sci-fi, fantasy, romance, horror, you name it. Not to mention he gets to display just how sensational he is with different dialects. You got your standard American accent.
I guess it was just here to tease me.
Maybe you should take care of that. The first thing you notice about a woman's age is her skin.
But he can do specific ones like Southern.
You don't know exactly where in Carlin we're going, so you got to take me with you.
And I brought him all the way up here at my own expense to officiate.
And even the Lord Jesus himself was presented with delusions in the desert.
Queens.
You're either leeching off mommy, or leeching off welfare, or living off the government in jail.
He can also do French.
You seem so intent on making France your new,
Spanish.
31 days of absolute incarceration.
And whatever's going on here.
Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you were thinking at this point, well, then why did you do this to yourself?
Well, you ain't a captain of no ship, and you never was. You ain't no copper. You ain't the president, and you ain't my father.
My heart is right here, but you've only got one arrow, so don't miss.
I will admit, I was among the many who were skeptical of his casting as Batman. Even though I heard about him in Good Time and The Lighthouse, I still saw him as Edward Cullen, which is an embarrassing perspective because, need I remind you, I hadn't even seen a Twilight movie, or any of his films up to that point. But hey, I love when actors in movies prove me wrong, so if it weren't for the Batman, I wouldn't be so enchanted by this man and his show-stopping performances. And while I was already a big fan of his acclaimed movies before starting this project, I was still able to find pleasant surprises. Mayhaps the real journey were the freaky friends we made along the way. When it comes to Rob's upcoming movies, we of course have the Batman sequel, which is very well established. I'm very excited to see, and I pray it doesn't get delayed again. But one movie we're definitely getting very soon is Die My Love with Jennifer Lawrence, which just premiered at the Cannes Film Festival last month. And just looking at that one clip that was released, it already looks like it's going to be pretty high on this list. He also finished filming the drama with Zendaya, so we might be getting that sometime next year. We also got him in Christopher Nolan's next star-studded epic The Odyssey, as well as him starring and producing in a crime movie called Primetime. He might be in Dune Messiah, which, if I will be completely honest, I wasn't interested in watching it until the news broke. And most recently, it was announced he was going to be in a heist thriller for Netflix called Here Comes a Flood, so ain't that neat. Hopefully he can do more comedies, hopefully he can do more voiceover work, and hopefully he can get casted in a musical. Seriously, if he signs up for an animated musical comedy, I will go feral. Like, foam at the mouth, go feral. Fingers crossed. Since this idea all started with the letterboxd list, I brought it back so you can see the full ranking in all of its 35 movie glory. But I also made another one on how to rank these normally from best to worst if you're curious about my genuine thoughts on the movies. Make sure you follow me on Letterboxd because I will be updating these lists when a new movie of Rob's comes out. And if you want to watch more ranking videos from me, I have a good handful in the playlist you can watch for your viewing pleasure. Thanks for going down this weird rabbit hole with me, and always remember, you don't know where the hot dog's from. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and join my Patreon, and I will see you later. Okay, bye!